Oh, yeah. College football countdown to kickoff show powered by Calvi Electric. I'm your host, Nick Kosko, taking you up to Rutgers Football noon. They're taking on Illinois today. Maybe win number 2 on the season. As a Rutgers alum, one can only hope. Oh, boy, if they lose today, you might not hear me talk about Rutgers until my pick each week now if they lose today. But it's basically a battle of the basement teams. So we'll see how that goes. Before we get into Rutgers, of course, we got to talk about all of the big games in college football today. I want to take a look at the rankings and the possible playoff implications for a lot of these teams in the SEC, Big 12, and, of course, the Big 10. Bob Asmussen of the Champaign News Gazette is going to join me in a little bit, talk a little Rutgers-Illinois, and, of course, some Big 10 as well. But we have to start out with the college football playoff picture and what some of these games mean today for some of these teams that are going to try to make a run at the playoff. And I wanted to start today with Oklahoma. They're looking for a statement game today. The Red River rivalry is back today. They're taking on Texas on the road. Texas is ranked number 19. And I was actually really surprised to see this when I initially looked at the schedule this week, because Texas, at least in the last couple of years, they've been very overrated. They're always ranked in the preseason. They've lost to Maryland, for goodness sake, in the past 2 years to open up the season, and yet they are still ranked top 25 to start of the year. They lost to Maryland again this year. I don't know how they're top 20. They've won 4 in a row, though. So, and you got to give them credit. Big win over USC earlier this season. Texas is rolling right now. That was a very disappointing loss at home, by the way, to Maryland. They beat up on Tulsa. Who cares? But they beat number 22 USC. They beat TCU, and they beat Kansas State on the road. Kansas State's not that good, but they beat them on the road. So big wins from Texas. They're 4-1. They're going to host Oklahoma today and Kyler Murray. When I look at this game, and this is big for Oklahoma, if anybody is going to make it out of the Big 12 to the playoff, it's going to be Oklahoma and maybe even West Virginia. One of those two teams could get into the college football playoff this year, but they have to be undefeated. I cannot see right now a one-loss Big 12 team making it all the way to the playoff unless a couple other teams have 1 losses, and then you can debate based on conference championships and also who has the better resume. But as far as Oklahoma, for me, at least according to the ESPN playoff predictor, they have a 33% chance to make the playoffs right now at number 7. This is going to be really, really interesting today as they're on the road. I don't want to spoil my pick for later, but Oklahoma to me has the advantage. When you have a guy in Kyler Murray at quarterback, and I get they don't have Rodney Anderson at running back, but he's been out for the past couple weeks, and Oklahoma's still rolling with Murray back there, who is a Heisman candidate. And by the way, is going to be playing professional baseball with the Oakland A's next year. Kyler Murray leads the way for Oklahoma. They have not missed a beat. I like them today against Texas, but if Oklahoma is going to make a run at the playoffs, they actually need other teams like Oklahoma State and West Virginia to keep winning. If those other two teams keep winning and Oklahoma keeps winning, then you have these matchups later in the year. You're going to have these great games that are with highly ranked teams, and the Big 12 will finally get some playoff consideration because they've been one of the few conferences that's been left out of the college football playoff. I know Oklahoma made it last year, but when you look at the college football playoff, it's SEC and Big 10 dominated, and you throw in a Big 12 team in there. Pac-12 had Oregon and Washington a couple of years, but other than that, it's been mostly Big 10 and Big 10 and SEC. So Oklahoma, should they lose today, I think they're done. If you have a bunch of 1-loss Big 12 teams, they're screwed. And then you have to rely on a team like West Virginia that's undefeated. If they can run the table, they might have a good shot at the playoffs should they be undefeated and win the Big 12. Texas, I don't think is going to get in. That loss to Maryland is going to absolutely kill any shot they have at the college football playoff unless you have a bunch of 2-loss conference champions. So this is a huge game for Oklahoma. If they want to get back to the playoff, make a run at a national title this year, they have to win this football game. Text board's open at 609-403-0973. Text in your college football questions, your thoughts on the college football playoff, Rutgers-Illinois, whatever you want. Chime in. Take a look at those later in the show. The SEC, by the way, 2 teams last year. They could very well do it again. I think Alabama and Georgia are the 2 best teams in the country. By far. Alabama, to me, is in their own stratosphere, then Georgia, and then everybody else. Clemson, I know they have Trevor Lawrence, a quarterback, but they missed Kelly Bryant last week. I know, but they barely squeaked out a win over Syracuse. Went down to Chase Bryce, who was, by the way, a sixth-string quarterback last year. And he was thrust into the starting lineup as Lawrence got hurt. Boy, were they missing Kelly Bryant last week. So Clemson, to me, is a very good football team, but if you're talking the two best teams in college football right now, you're looking at Alabama number 1 and Georgia number 2. But Bama is so far and above Georgia. Like I said, Bama way up there. They're on a different planet right now. That's how good they are. Then Georgia, then everybody else. So the SEC, to me, if they're going to get two teams, it's going to be Alabama and Georgia. But what's interesting, they are two undefeated teams in the SEC. The other two are LSU. Not that surprising. They're traditionally a great program. Ed Orgeron has that team on a roll right now, 5-0, and Kentucky. How about Kentucky, number 13? A basketball school is playing this well in SEC football. Give a little respect to the SEC East. Wow, Kentucky, man. It's going to be interesting because they do have to play Georgia in a couple weeks. If Georgia still is number 2 and they're undefeated, and Kentucky's undefeated, and we're talking about a top 10 Kentucky team, can you imagine if Kentucky's undefeated and they upset Georgia? Kentucky would be at least top 7, number 6, argument for the top 5. That, to me, would be astronomical, and then you have to throw in a wrench in all the SEC's plans. Then if you want two SEC teams, you need Kentucky to win out and beat Bama in the SEC championship game. And then Bama would still get in. That's how good they are. So Bama still does need to play LSU and Auburn on their schedule. Of course, Auburn's the Iron Bowl, end of the season. LSU is near the end of the year. So for Bama to go into the playoff, I think they're automatically in, even if they lose the SEC championship game, if they beat LSU and Georgia and they're still highly ranked teams. An undefeated Alabama team going against a one-loss Georgia team, an undefeated Georgia team, a one-loss Kentucky team, for God forbid, in the SEC championship game. Should Bama go undefeated, lose the conference title game, they will still get in because they beat teams like LSU and Auburn. That is how great Alabama is. That's how great Nick Saban's squad is this season with Tua Tagovailoa at quarterback. How is it possible that he has his best quarterback? They just won the championship last year with him coming in relief as a true freshman in the second half, and now he's the best quarterback Saban's arguably ever had at Alabama. And you have a guy in Jalen Hurts who's led that team to 2 national titles. So God forbid Tua got hurt, you can count on Hurts. That Bama team is so great. Based on that and what they've done so far, and I get they haven't really played many teams, but they're killing everybody. That team is going to be in the playoff, barring something ridiculous. But the thing is, should Bama get beat up by LSU and Auburn, and then a bunch of those teams only have one loss, it's going to be interesting to see, based on tiebreakers, who makes the SEC championship game. They can only get in without winning the conference title should Bama only have one loss. If Bama has 2 losses, basically if you have 2 losses, you're not getting in. Unless a lot of teams have 2 losses and you manage to win your conference title with 2 losses, and you have to weigh your schedule against other teams' resumes. So it is going to be really interesting to see what the Big 12 and the SEC can do. The Big 10, by the way, just real quick on them, it's going to be Ohio State or Michigan coming out of the Big 10 to go to the playoff. I think Penn State's done unless they beat Michigan and Michigan beats Ohio State. Then you have to look at tiebreakers and see who's going to get in over who to represent the East Division in the Big Ten title game in Indianapolis. Because Wisconsin's not getting in. No way. I'm sorry, Wisconsin. You were a nice story last year, but ugh. That is an ugly, I'm going to repeat it, ugly loss earlier this year to BYU. 3rd game of the year. I know Iowa's a respectable program as well, but Wisconsin's at home. They beat them by 11. I'll tell you what, if Wisconsin struggles on the road against a really bad Nebraska team today, no chance they get any respect for college football play. I don't care if they win the Big Ten title. They're not going to be ranked higher than 6. That BYU loss absolutely stings. That was a awful loss. Sorry, Wisconsin. You are not getting in to the college football playoff. Text board's open, 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Text it and chime in your thoughts on college football. Rutgers-Illinois today. We'll take a look at those later as well. Bob Asmussen coming up in a little bit. We'll discuss Rutgers and Illinois today and go around the Big Ten as well. So basically, to wrap up the college football playoff notes on Ohio State and Michigan, I think it's going to be one of those two. The winner of the Big Ten, as long as it's one of those two, they will get in. Penn State may still have a shot, because that was a very close loss to Ohio State, and those are two great football teams. But I can easily see a Michigan team beating Ohio State later this year. One-loss Michigan team, undefeated Ohio State team. I can see this. Michigan winning the Big Ten title, and then Jim Harbaugh's finally in the playoffs. Jim Harbaugh has a fire underneath him. Not saying he's on the hot seat, but there's something going on right now where Jim Harbaugh has this team playing really, really well. I know they squeaked out a win against Northwestern, but there's a bit of a different feel with the Michigan program and Jim Harbaugh, because he knows the pressure's on him to win a Big Ten title. They haven't even gotten to the Big Ten championship, let alone the college football playoff under Harbaugh yet. But this could be the year. We could finally be looking at it. All right, we'll take a quick break. Bob Asmussen coming up next from the Champaign News Gazette. Keep it locked here for the college football countdown to kickoff show powered by Calvi Electric right here on 97.3 ESPN.
This is the College Football Countdown to Kickoff Show, powered by Calvi Electric on 97.3 ESPN.
Back here on the College Football Countdown to Kickoff Show, powered by Calvi Electric. Nick Kosko with you on 97.3 ESPN. Pleased to be joined now by Bob Asmussen, covers Illinois football for the Champaign News Gazette. Bob, thanks for joining me this morning.
No problem. It's my pleasure.
So let's just get right into it here. Obviously, these are two teams, Illinois and Rutgers, and we're leading into Rutgers football here this afternoon. Both teams in the basement. They've split meetings the past 2 years. Both teams winning on the road. It just seems like, at least from the Rutgers standpoint, they can't get out of their own way, and they've declined since their first in the Big Ten. Well, Illinois has not had one of those, big-time bowl game seasons since the early 2000s. What do you think it is with these two programs just not being able to get quite out of the basement at the moment?
Well, it's pretty simple. You've got coaching turnover a lot in both places. You've had a lack of positive recruiting. I think those things, and both programs have been traditionally have a difficult time being consistent in terms of winning.
Now, when I'm looking at Illinois football, you have a head coach in Lovie Smith. Obviously, he's highly regarded in NFL circles. He didn't last too long in Tampa Bay in his second job, but he was brought in to kind of rejuvenate this Illinois program. It just seems like he has not been able to do that quite yet. They have a couple wins already this season, but I would say, at least for Illinois, when you're going up against the Rutgers team that's really struggled this season, it seems like this is a do-or-die game for Lovie Smith in the Fighting Illini.
No question. I think everybody here assumes Illinois will win this game. I don't think there's any question about that. I think the big deal here for Illinois is going on the road, win the Big Ten, which they have not been able to do literally over the last few years. So I think you're right. It's a must-win for Illinois. Now,
at least from the Rutgers side of things, based on your perspective, what do you actually see in this Rutgers football program? I know that the 1-4 record is basically indicative of what they are now. Obviously, with the bad losses to Kansas and Buffalo, they played Indiana well last week, just couldn't get the win. At least from the Illinois perspective, how do the Fighting Illini view the Scarlet Knights program right now?
Basically, I think they view them as the mirror of themselves, only the offense at Rutgers is not quite as good. Illinois' offense is playing pretty well. The defense has been a big problem. But Rutgers, the offense is clearly struggling, and that's a good thing for Illinois from their perspective.
I at least wanted your take on, the players to watch out for the Fighting Illini today. Obviously, Rutgers, they do have some athletes in place, but they're basically hit or miss. And they have a true freshman quarterback in Artur Sikowski, so they're kind of banking on him to develop. They have very young receivers, young running backs. They're basically young across the board, a couple of veteran offensive linemen. As far as Illinois is concerned, who are your players to watch out for today, and who should Rutgers actually be concerned about today?
A couple of guys on defense, linebacker Delshon Phillips and defensive end Bobby Roundtree. Both pretty good players. Both guys are developing, so they should be that have a big impact on defense. On offense, look out for a guy named Mike Epstein, a sophomore running back from Florida. He's been kind of the workhorse guy, can run between the tackles, but also outside. He's a good player. And then the receiver, guy named Ricky Smalling, another sophomore. So there's a lot of sophomores on that team. But I think those two guys on offense would be the guys I'd be looking for.
How do you think Illinois is going to approach this game today? Rutgers obviously struggles against the big play. They've struggled to stop the run this season as well. But mostly, if a team gets into a groove against the Rutgers defense, they're going to run the football, churn out these 7 to 10 yard gains, and all of a sudden break a 50-yard touchdown run, or just hit the big play on the passing side of the offense. How do you think Illinois attacks the Rutgers defense today?
You just said it exactly right. The running game. Levy Smith is an NFL coach. He likes to control the ball. He likes to not have his defense on the field a lot. So he likes to run as often as possible. And Russ Smith's offense works with that. So they've got a good running back. They've got a quarterback that can run or throw. So I think they're going to try to control the ball on the ground.
Now, just to kind of go around the Big Ten a little bit here, again, Illinois and Rutgers, they're at the bottom of their divisions at the moment. What do you think it takes for a team like Illinois to compete in the Big Ten West? Obviously, the Big Ten East is stacked. You got teams like Ohio State, you have Michigan State, and Penn State. Basically, the Big Four of the Big Ten are in one division. For a team like Illinois, where you're going up against pretty much Wisconsin and to an extent Northwestern, it seems like as long as Illinois gets their feet underneath them and get a couple good recruiting classes, I mean, they could shoot right back up the division and actually be competitive against all those other teams.
I agree completely. In Iowa, I would mention Iowa as well.
Right, yeah, absolutely. Iowa, yes.
Those teams all do well. That Illinois is kind of struggled with is stopping the run. The running the ball is not a problem for Illinois right now. But stopping the run has been an issue. And as long as that's an issue, they're not going to win at a high level in the Big Ten West.
I wanted to get your take on this because Illinois has been in the Big Ten for quite a while. There's been some realignments in the conference. Obviously, there used to be the Legends division, and I forget the other one off the top of my head. But then Leaders, that's right, thank you. And then they realigned it to basically make it a geographic divisions, because when they added Rutgers and Maryland, they wanted a total East division. They wanted the East Coast representation. But do you think the Big Ten should consider realignment due to the competitive imbalance between the two divisions, and do you actually ultimately think they might consider this within the next couple of years?
I think it's going to be cyclical, because I think Nebraska is going to come back. I think Iowa is going to be better at times. I think Minnesota will come back. I think Illinois can come back. I'm pretty sure Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State are always going to be good. But I'm not sure about Michigan State, Maryland. So I think that over time it'll balance that stuff out. What I think more than that, Nick, is I think the conference will add 2 more schools at some point. So you're going to have to do it all over again. So might as well wait for now, figure out who is going to be the league long term, and go from there.
So that's really interesting now that you just brought that up. You actually think the Big Ten's going to add more teams, or do you think they're going to add more teams and then subtract a couple?
No, they're going to add 2 more.
That's fascinating to me that the Big Ten would actually expand to 16 teams. So we're talking an absolute super conference. I mean, if you were the Big Ten committee, if you're selecting these two new teams, who are you going after at this point?
Pretty easy. Texas, Oklahoma.
So
that'd be easy.
So traditional Big 12 teams. Interesting.
So then you got to move somebody from the west to the east to probably Purdue. Sorry, Purdue. Good luck with that. But if you add Oklahoma and Texas to the west, that's a pretty good division.
Now the Big Ten kind of prides itself on being that Midwest type of conference. Now they have the East Coast teams in Rutgers and Maryland, but You really think? I know they're, I guess, kind of considered Midwest, but Oklahoma and Texas are more of southern states out there in the Midwest. So you really think the Big Ten would conceivably consider those two teams if they're thinking about expansion in a few years?
Well, they've already gone to Nebraska, pretty far west. They've gone way, like you pointed out, Maryland, Penn State, Rutgers, and the East. Might as well keep going. So I think what they'll look for is value. If you had Texas and Oklahoma, you had two superpowers in football, two great programs overall in terms of not just football, but every sport. Good schools, Penn State, Texas. So I think it's logical. That's the way I would go. I think that's where they'll go. Big Ten, though, is always one step ahead of the game in terms of expansion. So I think they'll be looking for this kind of thing, and that's what they'll do.
I mean, that is really interesting. And just one last thing on the Big Ten. Do you think, in light of this hypothetical expansion, do you feel the Big Ten would basically, especially if they took teams from the Big 12 like Texas and Oklahoma, do you think the Big 12 would kind of go along the lines of the Big East and cease to exist, or the Big 12 would look for other teams out of the smaller conferences to expand back to 12 teams?
If they lose those two, they're done. They're done. They have to break that. They'll join in the conference, but yeah, they'd be done. I don't think Kansas State and Iowa State can survive without Texas and Oklahoma. I really don't.
That is a very interesting thing to think about, considering the Big Ten, if they go to expansion, they could basically swallow up and hold another conference, and then there could be a huge realignment and shift in college football. All right, one more thing, Bob, before we let you go, and I appreciate you coming on this morning. If you follow him on Twitter, it's Bob Asmussen, at Bob Asmussen on Twitter. It's BOBASMUSSEN. He's a Illinois beat writer for the Champaign News Gazette out in Illinois. Bob, one more thing on this game between Rutgers and Illinois. I need your take on the game as a whole and who ultimately you think is going to win this one. Rutgers obviously has struggled. I didn't think they would do that well last week against Indiana, but they made it close. Illinois seems to be more on their level at this moment, but it could be Rutgers' last chance for a victory this season due to their schedule at the end of the year. How do you see this game unfolding?
It depends on which Illinois team shows up. If it's the team that played the first half against Penn State last week, they have a chance. They should win the game. If it's the team that played in the fourth quarter against Penn State, they're going to have a problem. But I think Illinois wins the post game, maybe a touchdown or so on a late score. I think Illinois' offense will have an advantage against the Rutgers defense.
All right, Bob Asmussen joining me on the College Football Countdown to Kickoff Show, powered by Calvi Electric. Bob, really appreciate your time, and thanks for coming on, and we'll see how this game turns out today.
Thanks, Nick. No problem. Anytime.
All right, that was Bob Asmussen of the Champaign News Gazette. Follow him on Twitter at Bob Asmussen, BOBASMUSSEN. We'll take a quick break. On the other side, we'll have our picks for some of these games today, and, of course, my Rutgers pick. We'll see if Rutgers fans like it again today. Keep it locked here for the College Football Countdown to Kickoff Show, powered by Calvi Electric, right here on 97.3 ESPN.
This is the College Football Countdown to Kickoff Show, powered by Calvi Electric on 97.3 ESPN.
Welcome back to the College Football Countdown to Kickoff Show, powered by Calvi Electric. I'm your host, Nick Kosko. Got a few more minutes to go. Take up to about 11:45, then we'll send you out to the Rutgers broadcast team. And, of course, on the call today, Chris Carlin and Ray Lucas. As always, live from Piscataway. Rutgers taking on Illinois. Someone's got to get out of the basement today. Could be Rutgers. As we look, before we get to that game, I do want to give my picks for some of the other games that are going to be going on today, the ones to watch out for. I got to start, and I mentioned it before to start the show, Texas and Oklahoma. Texas at home, number 19. Oklahoma, number 7. Frankly, I like Kyler Murray in this one for Oklahoma. I think he's just going to be too much. I don't see how he can be stopped. Take this, for instance. Kyler Murray's stats on the year. mind you, this is a guy who was sitting behind, Heisman candidate and Baker Mayfield, so he had a lot to get through. And he is going to be playing baseball next year, but this is what he's doing. This is very well be the last time we see him on a football field this season. 77 of 109 on the year, nearly 1,500 yards, 17 touchdowns, 2 picks. That's just passing. This kid is a stud. He's equally as good as Mayfield was last year, throwing the football. Completion percentage is at 70%. He's averaging over 13 yards a pass attempt. He's only been sacked 5 times. Look at his quarterback rating. I mean, college is different too because it's he's at 230.9, but the raw rating is 96.7. The kid is absolutely fantastic. If you're Texas, how do you stop this kid? He's also rushed for 285 yards this season and 4 touchdowns. He's a true dual threat quarterback. If you're the Longhorns, good luck. Even on the road. I'm going to roll with Kyler Murray and the Oklahoma Sooners to win this football game. They'll still be undefeated. They'll be 6-0. And then if you look at, I'm looking at their schedule ahead. This is their toughest game until they play Oklahoma State and then West Virginia at the end of the year. They're on the road at TCU. Road games are always weird. TCU now no longer ranked though. They'll beat Kansas State at home. They'll beat Texas Tech on the road. They'll host Oklahoma State. That'll be interesting. They're going to beat Kansas. Then they're at West Virginia. Oklahoma and West Virginia could very well both be undefeated and then play each other in the Big 12 championship. But when I'm looking at Oklahoma, I'm looking at one of your Heisman frontrunners in Kyler Murray. And I don't think Texas is as good as advertised. 4-1, sure. But, again, who have they beaten? They lost to Maryland. They've only beaten Tulsa. They beat TCU and USC, good. But they beat Kansas State. They've beaten 2 of those teams. Both those games against the ranked opponents, by the way, were at home. They were at Texas. Are they better than years past? Right now, yes. I still don't think they're as good as advertised. Give me Oklahoma on the road over Texas. I think this game could propel Oklahoma to a top 5 ranking next week. The other game, SEC battle. I mentioned these two as well earlier. Florida and LSU. Now, Florida is an interesting team. They're going to be home today. It was the Dan Mullen revenge game against Mississippi State last week, so I thought that was intriguing. Low-scoring game, but I like Florida. I've always been a kind of a low-key Florida Gator fan, dating back to their Tim Tebow days. They're 4-1 right now. I get the loss was to Kentucky, but Kentucky's undefeated right now, and they're ranked. Gotta give them credit, but it's been back-to-back impressive road wins for Florida at Tennessee and at previously number 23 Mississippi State. So when I look at Florida at home today, I actually like them. I really do, and I get LSU's a top 5 team. LSU's been fantastic with Ed Orgeron leading the way this year. But I think there's going to be a bit of a challenge. LSU, they dominated Miami to open the year. They beat Auburn on the road. Very impressive. But since then, they've played Louisiana Tech and a bad Ole Miss team. The competition has been as good the last 2 weeks. So this is a real test. And it's interesting for LSU. They can't look past this game today. They play number 2 Georgia next week at home. You look past Florida, you could go into a downward spiral because number 2 Georgia's coming to town. You cannot, I repeat, you cannot look past number 22 Florida. But I like them today. I do like the Gators. I have a funny feeling that they are going to get out of their own way and win this football game. But it was a very disappointing loss to Kentucky a couple weeks ago, back in week 2. But I like what they've done the last 2 weeks on the road and coming back home, coming off a big win last week. I think Dan Mullen's rolling now. If you're Dan Mullen, you gotta love the position you're in right now. Felipe Franks having a decent season. The completion percentage could be better though for the Gators quarterback, but I gotta say, he's having a good year. 12 touchdowns to only 3 picks, just a shade under 1,000 yards. He's there. And they have a very balanced rushing attack with Damian Pierce and Jordan Scarlett. I'll even throw Lamico Pirine. Everybody gets the ball. And Frank's is a decent dual-threat quarterback as well. So everybody gets the ball. They have a very balanced offense. I think they can play the ball control game today and upset LSU at home. So give me Florida over LSU. The third big game of the day I want to look at was Notre Dame and Virginia Tech. Notre Dame on the road, and I think this is another game where you're going to see if Notre Dame is truly for real. You know, every year, it's just like Texas. Everybody wants to rank Notre Dame high in the polls preseason. This is the year they bounce back. This is the year they're going to be a great football team. We'll see. But they have two very impressive victories this season. They beat Michigan at home and Stanford at home. First week of the season and just last week. But in between, they've beaten Ball State, Vanderbilt, and Wake Forest. Nah. And they had close games with Ball State and Vanderbilt. So, is Notre Dame for real? It remains to be seen. I know they're 5-0. But this is their first test on the road. They've only played one road game this year. It was at Wake Forest. I mean, come on. Wake Forest? They beat Michigan and Stanford at home. Stanford, very impressive victory last week, though, because they killed them. But, again, you're in South Bend. Now you have to go on the road, Virginia Tech, number 24 in the country. Can Brian Kelly get over the hump here? It seems like every year Brian Kelly says, hey, I have a good football team. They win 4 games in a row. And then they lose 3 out of the next 5. And they're out of the conversation completely. I'm going to roll with Notre Dame today. I'll trust them this week. If they win this week, they are for real at 6-0. So give me number 6 Notre Dame over number 24 Virginia Tech. And to round out the show, of course, got to give you my Rutgers pick. A little less Rutgers chatter this week because, 1-4, losing to Indiana last week. Close game. Played better last week, but, you know, if you're Rutgers, you can't lose today. I know I said that against Kansas and Buffalo, and they lost anyway, but if you're truly going to get out of the basement of the Big Ten, you have to beat the other basement team that is Illinois. Lovie Smith, I like Lovie Smith as a head coach, but, I mean, you can't – if you're Lovie Smith, you're an NFL caliber head coach, and you can't recruit to get this Illinois team back to at least respectability. I don't even need Orange Bowl or Rose Bowl Illinois back from the early 2000s. I need a respectable Illinois in the Big Ten West because that division's a joke outside of Wisconsin and Northwestern. Nebraska's a joke this year. But if you're Rutgers, you're at home. It's the blackout game. Traditionally, Rutgers, when they sport the all-black uniforms, they have good games. Beat Michigan in 2014. Close game with number 4 Michigan State the very next year. They had a bad game in 2016, but they beat Maryland in their blackout game last year in a close game. Now, usually the blackout game, the fans will turn out for that one. But unfortunately, it's at noon again today. I mean, come on. Blackout game, at least be at 3:30. But I'm going to shock you right now. I'm not picking Rutgers State to win. I think it's going to be close, though. I will go 21-17 Illinois over the Scarlet Knights. I like what Rutgers did last week. Sikowski looked much more comfortable in the pocket as a true freshman quarterback, but they're not quite exciting me yet. They did a little more creative things last week on offense, but that defense has to shore up. You give up big runs today, you're screwed. Tackle better, limit the big plays, and don't turn the ball over. That's your recipe for a close Rutgers victory today, but right now I have to go Illinois 21-17. I hope they prove me wrong today, and Rutgers will get their second and maybe final win of the season. That'll do it for me. Thanks to Bob Asmussen of the Champaign News Gazette. All you folks out there as well. We'll catch you next week. Another noon game for Rutgers. Let's see what they can do against Illinois today. I'm Nick Kosko saying so long. College football, countdown to Kickoff Show, powered by Calvi Electric. See you next week. Rutgers is next.